This video is brought to you by Squarespace, but more on that a little bit later. A ton of new content was released today for City Skylines, including the Roads and Vehicles update, which adds new buses for everyone, and trams and different road options depending on the DLCs that you have. And while that would have been enough for most of us, we also got 2 new radio stations and 2 new content creator packs, the Heart of Korea and the Skyscrapers Content Creator Pack. And while I plan on incorporating everything into Verde Beach, today I want to focus on the Skyscrapers Content Creator Pack by Feinbold, which includes 44 unique skyscrapers to add to the city skyline. Skyscrapers are majestic, and bringing them into the game is really significant and really a breath of fresh air for a large vanilla city. In large cities, they define the skyline, provide a sense of place, are unique and really identifiable landmarks. They can also assist in providing the density needed to make high-capacity transit viable and really make best use of really valuable and in-demand land. Today, we're going to build a secondary central business district within Verde Beach in Old Verde Beach. We'll thoughtfully increase the density in what is right now a fairly low density area and taper the densities up in a way that makes sense. But before we do that, I feel like we need to take a look at each of the skyscrapers one by one so we have a full understanding of what this content creator pack is offering. And since we're constrained on space in Verde Beach, I thought it might be good to go someplace that has lots of land. Someplace like Verde Beach episode 10. Okay, it feels real weird to be back here, but here we are. This save is from January 16th, 2021. And you can see that I've just laid out some of these skyscrapers. So I've kind of organized them by continent. So we'll start out here and we're looking at the Japanese building. We've got 6 new Japanese buildings right here. These 2 buildings are from Taiwan. This one is from Singapore. Then we move over to Australia where we have these 4 buildings that are inspired by Australian skyscrapers. And then we move over to Europe. And there's a lot of European assets, which is pretty exciting. These 2 right here are from the UK. This one is from Spain. There's a whole lot of German-inspired architecture as well. Makes sense. Feinbold is from Germany, I believe. So right here, all of these are from Germany. This one right here is from Poland. These 2 are from Italy. These 4 are from France. And then we move to another continent, North America, and we have some American buildings. So these are inspired by buildings in the United States. Then we go south a bit, and then we have some inspiration, first of all, from Argentina, and then 2 from Brazil. And then we go over to Africa where we have these 4 buildings from South Africa. So really attractive new buildings. I think it's really exciting to have these here. And what's really exciting about this is now we have the opportunity to mix and match these different buildings from around the world to take these different design sensibilities and mash them together into our cities to form some really unique central business districts or even secondary skylines for our cities that are really unique and different. And that's what we're going to focus on today, that secondary skyline. We're going to take some inspiration from Atlanta, which actually has 3 different skylines, one in downtown, one in midtown, and one in Buckhead. And Buckhead is interesting because it has a full 1/3 of the skyscrapers in Atlanta. We're going to take Old Verde Beach and transition it into the secondary skyline that I always imagined it having. But before we do that, I want to give a huge shout out to today's video sponsor, Squarespace. Sometimes you know you have something big on your hands. When that's the case, you want to tell the whole world about it. And today's video sponsor, Squarespace, can help with that. With its powerful and beautiful online platform, it's perfect for creating websites of any kind. With Squarespace, you can create a website that builds a community around your city by creating a site with a fully integrated comment system supporting replies, likes, and comments, as well as powerful blogging tools to create, share, and schedule posts. And once you've created a community around your city, you can connect with your audience and generate revenue through gated members-only content, manage your members, send email communications, and leverage audience insights all in one easy-to-use platform. If this sounds good to you, head to squarespace.com/cityplannerplays to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to the build. Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building the city of Verde Beach, and we've got a good one today. We are going to be working on a second central business district. Now, this is something that I've wanted to do for the longest time, but we just haven't had the assets in vanilla to do it. And I would assume that the original plat of Old Verde Beach would have a great deal more density than it currently does. Couple of reasons for that. First of all, the historic street grid lends itself well to redevelopment. This is a very old part of town, and many of these buildings would have been well beyond the end of their useful life, including this disaster response building. But the main thing is the land value. If we take a look here, we can see that one of the most valuable parts of the city generally is Old Verde Beach. So it's even more valuable than downtown, and that pressure on the land values would be a reason for this to develop into a more intensive use. So we're going to do a little bit of that today, but we're going to have some height restrictions through here. And what that really means is that any building that is over 100 meters, maybe a little bit higher than that, we don't want it in this area. So we're going to be really thoughtful about our development here and focus on making a development pattern that seems like it's plausible, like it could have happened over time, because reasonably that's what we would have wanted to do, is develop this over a number of years. So it's going to be very expensive, this build. And if we look right here, we're not doing great financially. And I know it's been bouncing up and down, but more often than not, it's not in a good place. And the result is that our bank balance is just kind of hovering in the same place. So I've done a bit of research, and we have a very expensive policy enabled, and we're going to want to change that. So right here, we have the Prefer Parks policy enabled. And it's a fine policy. It draws 10% more people to your parks at the expense of them going to your unique buildings. And it costs $100 per park plaza or park area in the policy area. And for us, that's our entire city. So this is a very expensive policy, and I'm going to prove it by popping in here first. And we see that our policies it's costing us roughly $245,000 per week. So let's disable this policy and see what it does to our budget. Okay, and it appears that our budget is finally stabilized. And what it's stabilized on is this costing us roughly $46,000 less per week. So we're now always running a surplus, and that's excellent because now we can place these buildings with confidence, knowing that we are not going to bankrupt the city in the process of building our new little central business district, our secondary central business district. Now that we've done that, we should really think about what we're going to do here, and let's talk about our plan a little bit. So this building right here, this disaster response unit, it's a fine building, and early on this was the biggest building in our city. But I think it's outlived its useful life, and we have other buildings that are similar to this, these sort of disaster mitigation buildings, and we don't have them in the middle of our business districts. We have them kind of out in the periphery, and that is where this one belongs, and that is where we're going to move it. So that is going to open up a ton of space down here. And then this couple of blocks right here is where we're going to concentrate most of our dense development. But let's get this moved first. And where we're going to move this is right over here. And this location makes sense to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, we've already got a bunch of helicopter depots out here, so it's just one more in a series of these. Truthfully, this building, because it's reliant on mostly helicopters, it doesn't really matter where it is. It'll be a little bit slower, but ultimately, it's still going to get the job done, and the reduction in speed is going to be fairly minimal. So let's work this in to make it look a little bit better. Now that we've placed this here, we've lost our trees. We should also look at our contours to make sure, yeah, that's not good. We want them to have a flat area behind the building. Okay, so we've pulled our forest back here and hidden this thing pretty well. And I'm pretty pleased with how this has turned out. So you might be looking at this thinking things look just a little bit different, and they might. So I've swapped out a couple of mods. For the longest time, I've been using Ultimate Eye Candy as the way that I control the LUT settings in this. And I've decided to swap this out with a more modern mod. We're now using Theme Mixer, and I've created a Verde Beach theme, which is just a vanilla theme with some of my own settings to get the colors the way I want them to be. And I will be uploading this to the Steam Workshop so that you're able to use it yourself. It's just the Reaper Real Blue LUT along with a couple of tweak settings within Theme Mixer. The main reason I've done this though is I wanted to bring Play It into the build. This is going to really help us today because we're going to be changing the time of day routinely to see where our shadows are being cast. It's going to be really important. We're placing some large buildings and we don't want the shadows to completely dominate the other buildings in the area or the other towers themselves. We're going to use this area as the center. You see, the reason why we're doing that is this. We've got high capacity transit here. And that is going to be something that's going to be very important to maintaining this area as the type of place that would have this sort of density. So let's figure out where our new unique buildings are. If we take a look, we go into our unique buildings menu, then over to our content creator packs. We got to scroll past a bunch of stuff, including literally every single one of these seaside resorts buildings that we've been ignoring. we're gonna place them soon, but we're just not there yet. And then we get to all of our new towers, all 44 of them. And you'll see that these towers are meant to go together. They're inspired based on real buildings, and you can figure out which buildings they're inspired by with the clues that are given. The names are not the real names of the building. So the Australia Triangle building and the Australia Poly building, those are not real building names, but the hint is given underneath it. 119 meter tall building from Australia, built in 1964. So with a little bit of research, we could figure out what this is. And I'd like you to do some of that research. So as we're placing some of these buildings, if you know what building it is, put the name of the building and drop it in the comments with the real buildings. I'd love to see where these are really at. And if you are seeing these buildings on a daily basis or you've visited them, it'd be really neat to be able to check them out in real life and see how close the models are to reality. I want this to be a really pedestrianized area, and I think that that's where we need to start. This is, for the most part, a pedestrian district. So let's extend that idea further. So I'm running this generally in the center. We're going to pull two buildings up along the side here, and I think that that's going to create a nice framing for this. I think one of these German buildings, we have this building, which is 131 meters tall, maybe a little too tall for what we want to do, and this one that's 94. Let's grab this and see what it looks like. And you'll see why I have this height restriction. This is just a little bit taller than the vanilla Green Cities buildings that we have. So as a result, I think it doesn't look all that out of place. So we'll place one there. And then if we were to look at this other one, the companion building, this just totally dominates all of the rest of the buildings through here. So that is why we're restricting our heights a little bit. So there are a number of buildings that belong, quote unquote, belong together that we are not going to be placing together. So these buildings from Japan are another good example of that. So we've got this Island Park Tower. This one's 95. This one right here is 131 meters tall. This one is 203. And this one is 167. So we're going to try to place at least one of these over here. Maybe we'll use this one to step down a little bit. And we might, just to have a little bit of height variation, include this over here. Now, I want us to pay attention to our population too, because we're going to start impacting this. So our population is about 184,000. And if we go too far, we're going to really take that down. So we're going to keep an eye on that because we don't want to totally destroy our city. The other thing that we should be looking at is our contours, because these buildings need to be on a flat pad. And if they're not, we need to give them more space so we can landscape around them. Truthfully, we should be giving these buildings space anyway, because the space will allow us to place plazas, place different sorts of park type amenities. It'll make it feel much more realistic. I'm going to place this tower here for now. Actually, we're going to call a mulligan on that building. I think we may place this building right here. This is One Montgomery. It's 93 meters tall. And let's see that the height there, maybe that's not the best fit. We could pull that one over here and begin our transition. Now, the thing to think about is it's higher over here. So if we place a building that's 93 meters tall over here and it's 5 meters up, it's actually 97. So that's something to consider and contemplate. So let's place this for the time being right here. We might move it. We'll have to see. One Galveston is another one that I've had my eye on. So this one is a bit taller and I think could be that center point that we have. Now I'm focusing these buildings on this main collector going through here, but I would assume that these buildings have side entries as well. So that would be an important consideration for folks actually accessing this building. We built this area during a live stream and it served us well, but I do think we're going to modify it slightly. And the modification that we're going to have is we're going to add in a pedestrian road through here. And I want to say that when we built this, that wasn't an option. So it's a welcome upgrade and improvement in this area. There we go. There we go. We've got another building that's under 100 meters tall. This one is from Italy, 95 meters tall, built in 1960. And I like that, again, this one is a bit thinner. What I don't like is that it's facing on this road. So that's not going to work well for us in this particular location, but it could work well in a narrower spot like this. The thing is, these buildings would be very close to one another, and I just don't see that as a plausible sighting location in this area. We just don't have enough density for that to make a ton of sense. I'm going to get rid of the zoning around here. I think I'm going to do the same thing around here. And there's a fire station. This is probably one of the first ones. We've got one over here already, so I'm going to get rid of this as well. And we're going to get really thoughtful about the uses that we're placing around here. So that's one of the reasons I'm not overly concerned about calling mulligans on all of these. The other thing to think about is with all of these towers being added, first of all, this would have happened over hundreds of years. And this would have also been the sort of situation where as these properties are being proposed, they just take a lot of time to plan and implement, a lot of property acquisition. They're very expensive. And as projects get more expensive, things that might seem unreasonable or unrealistic suddenly become very realistic because the property is so expensive that the property acquisition of a small property becomes a rounding error in the overall budget of a large project like this. So not a huge deal that we're taking some liberties like that in this particular instance. Let's continue to look for buildings, and we've got a couple here. This one is 117. It could fit as a nice addition to this area. And I actually like the idea of this being down here. The problem is we don't have space for it. I think we're going to make some space for it by moving this building over just a bit. And we've got some terrain here, which is going to be challenging for us. So we're going to level this block. And we'll move this building back here. And it's okay, but I wonder if we pull this over even further. Yeah, the building just situates a little bit better. So that is why the building will be where it is. It just, from a height standpoint, makes more sense. And we aren't terraforming as much. In reality, the tower would be, I mean, this is a project that would certainly conform to the landscape around it. That's the way these projects work. Not like that in the game, and that's totally fine. Now we have the ability to place this, and this one, it's too deep to place it back here, but we could place it along this pedestrian road. And I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to back it out just a little bit, and I'm going to call a slight mulligan on this, move it just a little bit further away so that we have some separation between these buildings. And we placed it on this side because, again, we've got the terrain challenges. The only thing we could do to fix this would be to remove this road and level this out completely. And I don't really want to do that. We don't want to lose that connectivity. So we'll just have to landscape this to make it look a little bit more reasonable. Next, we got these two towers from France, and I want to place the smaller variant of this as well. So this one right here is 185 meters tall, built in 73, and this one is built in 73 too, and it is 121 meters tall. So let's place this, and this again will be one of our taller buildings. We're going to orient this towards our existing district, give it a couple of tiles space in between, and it has what appears to be a Pepsi logo tilted in the wrong direction, but it's actually an L with the red and the blue, and this should look familiar to you, and I'm going to show you why. You come over here, it's actually the corporate headquarters of the electronics company. So super cool. I love that addition. To me, that's the kind of thing that makes this feel like, honestly, it feels like it was made by Paradox and Colossal Order and not by Feinbold. So Feinbold, that was an excellent addition. Great job with that. Next, we have this Olympia Turm from Germany, and it is a more modern looking building. This one was built in 2004. We're going to place this again within this 2-block area, and this may actually cause me to move this building from Japan over one. I'm really worried about those shadows. So moving this over just a little bit will help with that. Yeah, there we go. And if we take a look again, let's pop into here and switch the time of day and see where our shadows are being cast. And you can see that in this particular instance, I'm kind of worried about the shadows in the plaza area. And it looks like for a good portion of the day, there are shadows, but it's not the entire day. So that's just a thing to be aware of with taller buildings. You just want to make sure that you're not completely shadowing everything out the entire day. Now we're at the end of our buildings for our new Skyscrapers Content Creator Pack. This building right here is actually part of the brand new Heart of Korea content creator pack, which we're certainly going to get to. It's not going to be today, but I don't want to mix and match these in. I want to focus on those individually. So I'm going to make one last kind of sweep through to see if there's anything else that would fit well within this area. Maybe I should show how uncomfortable this would look. This right here is a building that is 210 meters tall. And you can see that this just totally dominates this area. The buildings that we've placed, I feel like they fit in appropriately. And that's because we've chosen the heights well. So we're going to add in the marble building. It's a building from South Africa, 128 meters tall, built in 1973. And I think that the height, again, works well, particularly in the center of this area. And it's going to allow us to spread our little district out a bit more. We are going to take some liberties here. What I think our liberties are going to be, we're going to move this building. So we move this building here, and I'm going to place this other building, this marble building, right about here. And I don't love the placement of that. I really wish that we could separate these a bit further. And I think that we can. We've just got to sever our roadway network and lose a bit of connectivity, which is totally fine. So let's call a mulligan on that and give this another go. We'll put this back in its original location. Actually, I'm good with it. Now that I look at it, we're going to leave it there. And I'm just going to give this as much space in between there as I can. And then we can reestablish that pedestrian connection through here. Because that is the thing. This is a pedestrian district, and I don't want this to be too long in between there. And let's see if we can actually curve this pedestrian road to wrap around. There we go. There we go. That is a good fit. That is a good fit. The other thing, if we wanted, we could have also been thinking about our sight lines. I think that because we have this little pod, it's not as big of a concern here. So I would have liked to have thought a little bit more about our view of our mountain, our view of the ocean, pull right into these buildings and think on the penthouse, the C-suite, the people making the decisions. Do they get a view of the ocean? Yep, they get a view of the ocean and the mountains. Here, are they getting that view? Yep, of course they are. They're right out in front and right here. And that's another reason why you would step down a little bit in this particular area, is to maintain the views, ensure that all of the towers have good views. And I could actually see that being a rationale for this road moving a bit. And I think we're going to do that. Yeah, that is good. So this is just slightly over. And the funny thing is, this building, which is one Galveston, it doesn't have any windows at the top. So even though it's a taller building, the views are going to be obstructed because this is the top height. That stinks. That would really stink. I would assume that would not be the way it is designed if it were built for this particular site. But alas, this is what we have. So we're going to live with it. Okay, and next I want to take this building from Brazil. This is an interesting building, and I looked for this one. I couldn't figure out exactly where it is, but one of the interesting things about this particular building is it's 99 meters tall, built in 1975. If you look at it, first of all, it orients it the long way. So it's a very long building, and what makes it unique is that it has this low density segment. So I'm placing the building first because we're going to actually add another road segment through here. A pedestrian road connection here. And I can't even place it here. It won't let me. Oh, I can. And then we're going to reorient this building towards this road. And the nice thing about that is it allows our building heights to vary a bit. And this will be a rationale for scooting this building over just a little bit. As we move these around and try to preserve the views of all of the towers, we end up with this little bit of a donut through here. And I like the idea of this. We could do a couple of things. We could do the thing that everyone would yell at me for, which is add parking. And truthfully, I don't love the idea of that anyway, because these buildings would likely have structured parking. The other thing that we could do that's probably a little more realistic is add in some plazas. So I think that is what we're going to do. A little more reasonable anyway. So let's reestablish this pedestrian connection through here. Then I think we've spread things out enough. And there's one more that I want to add, and that is that Australian poly building. We're going to add that right here. let's clean up our landscaping. I know that we did this on stream, but it no longer makes sense. So no harm in calling a mulligan. Okay, now that we've cleaned it up through here, what we're gonna do is start to think a little bit more about our parks. So there's two things that we could do. We could come through and we have some vanilla plazas. So that's right here under our plazas menu. And we could just add in, you know, one of these sorts of deals. And I think that we will. And I'm gonna turn off our contours and I'll show you why I like using these. So first of all, they just feel right in an area like this, but they conform to the landscape really well. And I like that about them. And some of these fit these spaces perfectly. Like that is absolutely perfect for this space. That said, we've also got some of our pedestrian area parks and we should check those out because some of these are just better looking assets these days, if we're just being completely honest. So we're gonna place a couple of these larger fountain plazas if they can fit. And some of this might be just scooting our buildings over again, little mulligan. There we go. And it stinks. If your contours are off at all with some of these, you gotta replace them. And it really doesn't look like it's that bad, but that little bit is enough to make that park look terrible. So we're gonna grade this out and see if that fixes it at all. I decided to change the focus of this towards the road to see if that improved anything. Maybe I could face it around, just kind of move it and see which way it looks the most broken. And I think it actually looks the best facing towards the road. And I think it's just adjusting the heights a little bit better. So we're gonna leave that like that and be happy with that. And then we've got these other spaces that are a little bit awkward. And here's where I think it makes a lot of sense to use our normal pavement paths. You could come through here and certainly use really whatever you'd like to use. You could come in and use some of these paths, or you could use decals to make this look however you'd like. I'm gonna come through and use these paths. Now the funny thing is, this is not actually situated on the road, so it looks a little bit weird unless we're eyeballing this, which is what we're gonna do. There we go. And through here, we can do the exact same thing. Turning on grid is really helpful because you can just add a couple of little paths through here. And we're gonna add these and use them as a place to plant trees. And in other cases, you might wanna use them for lights. Like let's say you wanted to have lights through here. You might still be able to add your row of trees in between. And the upside of this is now at night, there's additional lighting in the area. So you can see that's a pretty significant difference. The other thing you could do is go through and add a gravel path, but you lose the lights then. So whatever you like to do, I think we are gonna add in some paved paths along here for the additional light. And then to frame many of these buildings, we're gonna have these paths. Give people other options to get through here. Some of them are gonna be lumpy and bumpy and kind of crazy looking, but they're gonna look good from far, and we're gonna say that that is going to be okay with us in this particular instance. And now here, I'm gonna try to do something about these lumpies and bumpies. Right mouse clicking up here with our slope terrain tool, left click here, and try to slope this out a little bit more. And we've added this path to provide an option out of here. This one's gonna be too extreme, so we'll remove that. But at least through here, you'd have an option. Obviously, maybe that one's no good either. But we could make that work if we back it out just a little ways. I like that. I think that that works out all right. So now everyone's sad because we lost a game of some sort. But I think that we've made this area look a little bit nicer. So what we're gonna do is start to landscape these areas a bit. And then we're gonna look at the land uses that surround this and see if we can make this all blend a little bit nicer. Okay, so I think that we've covered most of this area pretty well. The one thing that, you know, just since we're over here, I'd love to do is kind of just find some of these gaps in between buildings and just load it up with some of these oak trees. To me, that helps fill in the tree canopy and it makes it look a little bit more realistic. That said, that's all personal preference, and you can do whatever you want. So this is just what I think would look nice here, but we've filled it in, and this isn't super elaborate. We've got palm trees lining this area. We've got our park here. We've outlined a couple of these grassy areas to keep the ruffians out. We've added some flowers, some young lindens, because of course we did. And I think that we've got enough separation in between these buildings. And the one way that you can tell that is we have these grassy spaces in between. And I think that particularly when you have buildings this size, it's especially important to think about that separation in between these uses. Now, the next thing to think about is how we're transitioning up to these densities. And you can see that we struggle a bit. There's pretty stark differences here in density. Truthfully, one of the better locations for this, I think, is where we have our hospital, where there's at least a logic behind the step down from our highest densities. But we've got some issues here where it looks like there must be some unnatural dividing line here that made sense before, where I think we're mixing our uses. That was the idea I had here. And the result is that all of our buildings are shorter. So we've also got a mixture of districts here, which creates even more challenges. So we're going to call a mulligan on some of our thinking here before and modify this. And you can see the issue. We've got some low density commercial right here. The first thing I'm going to do, rather than just getting completely wild with it, is I'll just change our density of this zoning. It looks like it's our wall to wall here, and then our green cities on the other side. So that was a bit of a trick to make that work. And I'm reluctant to just wholesale start over on that idea. So let's speed this up and see what happens. Yeah, and these are all growing in pretty short buildings. So I don't think that that's going to improve with time. So we are going to call a mulligan and redo most of the buildings in this area, at least in this block. And what we're going to do is just rezone this to all be 100% residential. And one of the reasons I'm thinking of that is a lot of these would be commercial and office spaces. Granted, this one right here is supposed to be a residential tower. We know that it's a tourism building. That said, we've lost some of our residential population. And that's our biggest need right now as well. So this should be a way to recoup some of that population lost. And then let's come over here because we have the same sort of situation. So over here, we have a step down, but boy, oh boy, is that stark. Now, the reason we have this being as stark a step down as it is this is our farmer's market, or historically it has been. That said, it's not great. We've got parking on this pedestrian road, and I think that we're going to use this as an opportunity to redevelop the farmer's market into something different. So it didn't quite work the way I was hoping, and you've got to maintain your flexibility. This is how we're going to do it. So I want to look at our districts because we're going to change what kind of district this is. And what I think we're going to do is make this a green cities district, but we don't want to have local and organic produce. I believe that's what's creating the farmer's market. Yes, so that should solve that issue for us. So with that in mind, we are going to add in some commercial spaces, higher density, but we're going to really target them. There we go. So we've mixed the uses up all the way through here. And what's nice about that is it's going to give us a bit of a step back now. I think we're going to have to do something with our density here and increase it just a little bit. And the main reason is the office buildings are a little bit tall. And this is controversial. These are historic buildings. These are almost as old as the city is. But again, I think that the price pressure makes this a compelling enough choice that we're going to be okay with it. Now over here, we've again got some lower density stuff happening right here. We even have one historical home, and we are going to call a mulligan on this as well. And we're going to vacate this right of way. So this is the historic building, and I'm sorry, historic building, you have got to go. The reason I want to do this is to taper our density here. We're going to call a mulligan on the location of this high capacity fire station and move this to be closer to our hospital. And then to respect our topography, we'll move this flower plaza to be down here, which is a flatter area. And I think that it ends up looking much nicer. Now around here, this is a noisy part of town. We don't want to have more residential around here than we need. So I'm going to mix the uses a bit, have some offices, have some commercial, and then we're tapering down into our residential. And that opens up the ability to redevelop this into residential as well. And I like that. This all feels a lot more logical to me. Now, our buildings here, these, let's see where we're at. These are ending up being the Green Cities buildings, which is what I was hoping for. And if we take a look, these are level 1. These are going to rapidly increase because of the land value in the area. And once that happens, the heights will be a little bit more reasonable. There's one more block that's a little bit weird. That's right here, but it is high density. So I think that we might just live with a little bit of imperfection here. Oh, look at this. These are ending up being way taller than I had hoped. I was hoping that we could make this work, but I think what we're going to do is send this district down. And that is our farmer's market. It'll retain the name. That's fine. And that'll get rid of these Green Cities buildings that apparently are very tall in relation to the older buildings. And then I think that we should pay a lot of attention to this transition zone and make buildings historical at level 1 so that we don't have them growing to be very tall. So I'm going to let this whole block grow in. We're going to make every single building historical so that they don't get any taller. Okay, and that took a bit of time, but I think it was worth it. We really want to focus on that transition. It's really awkward to see just a bunch of skyscrapers coming out of the middle of nowhere. And we're going to have a bit of that. This road is really the dividing line, and we have single family across the street from that. That said, I lived 2 blocks off Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles back in the day, and I was in a 2-story building that was literally 2 blocks away from what I think might have been like a 50-story tower. So not not totally unreasonable and unrealistic. And we do have a little bit of that effect here where it's just kind of a row of density right in the middle of lower density uses. But I think it's okay. And with that, we've got a little bit of a secondary central business district opening up here. And I really, really like the way that this has turned out. Let's view this from downtown to get a sense of scale. And we'll take care of this quickly. Couldn't leave that behind. But when you're back here, you get a sense that, yeah, that there's some height back there. It's still nothing compared to downtown, and it's nothing compared to what downtown will be after our next episode, where we incorporate the rest of the buildings into the downtown area. But you can see that this is a little note of importance in its own right. And we've got a lot of transit service here. And this is likely one of the major tourist destinations in the city now that we've built this year. And I'm curious, what are we looking at for the transit use? Not that good. That's really unfortunate that it's only 96. I think that is a reflection that these buildings, they attract visitors. Nobody lives there. That said, if you were playing a modded build and you wanted to really take this up to the next level, you could take these and convert these to be whatever you want using Rico. So you could actually take this residential building and convert it to be a residential building. And then it would have likely hundreds, if not more, thousands of residents in this tower. And that would really change the way it functions. So that's a limitation of the vanilla game, but from a visual standpoint, looks absolutely outstanding. And to me, it makes some sense that we have this here. So with that, I think that we need to really take inventory of what we've done today and have a brief city tour. All right, and a little bit of a different city tour, but I think it's nice to do something a little bit different every now and then. And this is something else that I think is really important. Checking out how this looks at night, because this is really outstanding. And these assets, so I've looked at all of them at night, and what's really unique about them is that the lights are all different. And so I don't know if this is kind of regional rules and laws, or if it was just a design choice, but I really appreciate that some of the buildings are just simply dimmer than the others. You'll have policy decisions at the building level. The owner will decide we're going to be green and we're going to have LEDs that automatically turn off when you leave a room and it's empty for X number of hours, whatever. Those sorts of decisions can have a profound impact on how these buildings look at night. And I think it looks really, really good. So now when we pull out over here, obviously we've got some load challenges with this, but it just looks really, really good. I really, really like this. This content creator pack, this is one of those that, I don't love to pit the content creator packs against one another, but this for me would be one of the first I pick up. Because I really think that if you're going to build a dense urban city, you got to have unique towers. You got to be able to do unique things with them. And this gives you the ability to create a unique central business district that you just really can't otherwise. In downtown Verde Beach, we're utilizing some of the Art Deco buildings. So I believe we have one right here and maybe this one as well. And then some of the vanilla buildings like the Transport Tower. And then Pearls of the East, we have this tower right here, but there's really not a lot available to you. So your skylines start to look similar without this content creator pack. And the fact that this is a content creator pack means it's significantly cheaper than most of the DLCs, and it will have a profound impact on the way that your downtown areas look. It'll look more natural and realistic. And I'm looking forward to incorporating the rest of them down here. And initially I thought about doing everything at once, but either we'd have a 3-hour-long video, which could just be a stream then, or it would be rushed. And I figure we'll just take our time, do this over a couple of episodes, and really give this the time that it needs to look as good as it can. And I'm really enjoying doing this. And I hope that you've enjoyed watching. If you did, please consider hitting the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I cannot wait to see you in the next one. It's a privilege to be here with you today. Take care. Bye-bye.